gentlemen, that is not my usual voice. It is not my usual husky tones that you're experiencing right now for any other reason other than I'm very sick at the moment. And of course, because I host this podcast, it's important I start by telling you a little bit about myself and what's going on in my life. I am, as always, on this episode of the Roll Down podcast, joined by my co-host, my friend Sol. Welcome. Welcome, Sol. How are you?
Great to be here. I'm very excited for this app.
This is a second appearance on the podcast. We had this lovely gentleman on previously, probably about a year ago to this day, I would suggest, maybe even a little bit longer. He's qualified for Worlds, one of two OCE World representatives. I said that the first time that we met him, and I'm happy to say it again. Welcome, Tamura, to the show. How are you?
Hello, hello. I'm doing well. Yeah, excited to get talking about TFT, and thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Guys, this is going to be a no fuss episode, you know. We're just really going to get deep into some TFT. We're going to get deep into some patch experience, some tournament progression, and everything that's going on and everything that has been going on. I guess the first question that I really have for you, Tamura, before we even get started, is how does it feel to qualify for Worlds?
Oh, that feels amazing. Like I said on the broadcast, like the feeling of winning that final fight and qualifying. Like no, as soon as I won that fight, I knew I'd qualified. I was exactly the same as how I felt before. And so yeah, like I got asked before, it's like, does it like matter that you've already been? Does that take away from it? But not really, because like the feeling is the same every time, and it's like you're always ecstatic.
Is there ever a feeling that perhaps comes through even greater if you get there the second time? You know, that first time it's like a weight off your shoulders. The second time, you know, it's not a fluke now. You are one of OCE's best players. Does that make you feel a certain kind of way?
Yeah, it just definitely makes me feel more accomplished. I'll be honest, before I even qualified, I definitely felt okay, it's probably poor choice of wording, but I felt more qualified, like to represent OS before I even qualified. Because the first time was a fluke. Let's be realistic. There was 24 players in regionals. I was just one of the 24, and I was definitely not a favorite. I was probably dead middle of the pack, just like probably average around like rank 16 on ladder. And so I was just kind of like, the only way I qualify is if I win the whole thing, and didn't expect it to happen. But this time I prepped a lot going into even LCQ, and I didn't think I'd make it all the way to Worlds, but like I had like really high hopes for every tournament that I entered. And then when we made it to the final lobby, like there was 8 players, and like I said before, they were all amazing players, and I was gonna be super happy with whoever we sent. I knew that if we sent any two of the 8, like we were gonna be like in a really, really good spot to try and win worlds for OS. But I definitely did feel a lot more confident. Like every single tournament that I progressed through, I feel like my confidence like went up like a little bit each time. And so there was that, yeah.
Let's go back to the beginning, I reckon. I guess the most important question to discuss this is like going into Bruiser Cup, you know, you weren't yet a hyper qualified world's ready player, you know, you had to go through sort of a big gauntlet to get there. What was it like preparing for this sort of final weekend of big OC events?
So I kind of bombed out in a lot of the OQs. I feel like some of them like weren't my fault, and then some of them was just like I feel like I didn't play that well. But I also like wasn't like well prepped for any of them. And then I think like I had my final OQ, and then the next weekend was LCQ, and so I had like 2 weeks to LCQ, and that was when I was like, okay, like I have to go flat out. Like if I don't put in my all here, then I'm done with set 9.5, which was kind of sad to think about at the time because I knew that I was going to Vegas regardless. So it's like I want to do well, at least make it to regionals. Because then at least when I'm going to Vegas, it's like, okay, I'm not just a random, I'm not a nobody. Like I competed in 9.5, and I'm ready to do it again in set 10. And so that was when I basically DM'd Angora because he was playing on the super server at the time. And like I talked to him before when I went to Worlds in set 7, and I basically just asked him a couple of questions, and he was super helpful. He's always happy to chat TFT. And then he basically just gave me the rundown of what China thinks is good. And if China thinks it's good, then like it's probably good. So then I basically just stole the China tech of like playing around bruises, playing around Earth, and all that kind of stuff. And then yeah, brought it into LCQ, and then did so many VOD reviews with him and other players. Um, and yeah, I feel like that my advantage as a player was that I got to play around Earth Prep leading into the last day of the OQ, and then I got to bring it into LCQ, then I got to bring it into Bruiser Cup, and then I got to bring it into East Asian Finals, and then the final day of East Asian Finals was still the same patch. So like like a whole month almost of prepping like a couple of specific lines, and the fact that I got to like continue that just gave me the confidence and comfortability to play around the comps that I know.
Feel that your preparation, especially going with the Earth line, like I mean, I gave you sort of a massive edge relative to the rest of the field in the sense that like a lot of the players in sort of the LCQs and the events leading up, they were more tunneling sort of more towards like TF and multicasters. We saw that sort of meta evolve into what became sort of the Earth meta by the time we got to regionals. But I'm sure that yeah, you must have felt like you had a really big edge on the field in the lead up to that.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like a lot of players when they switch to Earth, like they'd only be doing it for like a week, and they quickly realized that Earth was like by far one of the strongest legends. But although there are some spats that just give you a free top four, the biggest thing about Earth for me was like you need to know how to play around the mid tier spats and secure top fours. I had a lot of really good games in LCQ and Bruiser Cup where I played around like Bruiser +1, Gunner +1. I think actually almost half of my games were Gunner games in one of the days. And so it's like that comfortability of knowing the like mid tier spats, you can like really like do really well with some of them. I think I even had like top twos with Bruiser spats. Obviously with the Kaiser 3 bailout, like that's obviously a top one. But I think that was it. Like there were some players who just went in there playing Earth and then they rip their tome, they don't get Demacia Slayer, and it's kind of like it's like a guaranteed bot too. And so just having that comfortability on different comps did give me the edge because I don't think I placed lower than a six like across all of the tournaments, like LCQ, Bruiser, and D Station finals. I might be wrong, but I don't think I did. Yeah.
Yeah, we were watching some of your games, and we were watching one of the events, and we flipped over to your POV, and I think you had like Jinx 3, Neferi 3. You just had this like completely random board that we had no idea how you managed to end up on, but I think you ended like a third that game. That was when we really sort of hyper focused on your performances there. Would you say that like the preparation that you did with Earth, you had more time than everybody else? Were you concerned that it was going to be like an Earth off in that instance? Like everybody was just going to be playing Earth? Were you thinking, oh, we might see a 50-50 split of TF and Ezreal here? What were you thinking?
So the biggest thing for me was that like I knew Kade wanted to play around multis. I knew Huey was 2020 multis because he locked in Ezreal and he'd been spamming multis on ladder for like the past week. And then I knew Kade wanted to play around it. So I did get a little bit of a fear factor when Kade said he was switching to so at first it was Angora wanted to play Ezreal, but he didn't want to contest. So then Angora was like, okay, I'm playing Earth, and I was like, oh crap, that's one extra Earth player. And then on day two, Kade is like, oh, I need to average a 2.2. I'm switching to Earth. And then at that point, I was like, oh no, this is like really bad because I had an edge going into day one. So yeah, there was definitely that. But what I already mentioned before, where I just knew that as long as I got the better lines in a couple of my games and played for first, and then in the other games where I didn't get my like the ones that I wanted, I could still secure, like sixth at worst, like ideally getting like a fourth or a fifth. I knew that that would be enough, and like my point lead was pretty consistent. Obviously finishing day one, I was like really close to being in first place. I was third. I think I was behind by 3 points. I just knew that if the consistency came through, I was fine. But it was a little bit scary because you notice in a lot of the games, the reason the points were so close is because, um, once Kade and Moose couldn't qualify, there's not really much of an incentive for them to go first. Obviously, they can play like the lines that they think are first or eighth because that's probably more fun in their spot. But it gets really scary because you know that Angora and Huey are still playing for like those really consistent lines and those really consistent top fours. Um, and so yeah, it got really stressful towards the end, but we just got lucky with a couple of good Demacia games and managed to clear with the points.
I'm curious, especially going into these like smaller field tournaments, like regionals, for example. I guess I'll just call it regionals. How much of
Mhm.
your sort of prep is spent sort of actually studying the other players, like their tendencies, what they, how they play, how they like to play, what they plan on doing? How much do you sort of let that change your strategy, if at all?
So going into LCQ, it's kind of hard to do that because you don't know too many of the players, and a lot of the players aren't streamers, so you don't have any VODs to watch. I think this was the first time I was introduced to Mocha Loca as a player, so I saw that he streamed on Twitch, so I got to see like a little bit of his gameplay, gave me a little bit of insight towards him, but obviously I didn't have like hours and hours of footage to watch. I knew a lot about Nedpool as a player going into LCQ. I knew that he wanted to play around Earth as well. So I'd say for LCQ, it didn't really change my playstyle too much. I think more so I would just kind of look at the lobby, check legends, and then adjust my playstyle if at all then. Um, and then going to regionals was very much the same because the thing about regionals prep is like you only need to top 8 out of 16. So you don't need to do anything crazy. You don't need to adjust your playstyle to the lobby. You just need to make sure that you're going sixth at worst. Like if you have a low roll game, you just get a sixth and get out of there. And like then you're happy because you know you have like I think it was like you had a lot of games to catch up your points. Like you're fine. It was like 12 games or something. So you don't have to relax. You don't have to stress. Sorry. But then going to the final 8, you definitely changed your play style. I knew what Aurora wanted to play around. I knew Kade and Huey were leading towards multis. I knew all of the lines Angora liked because I prepped with him a lot. And so there's definitely spots like there was a couple of games where I'd scout and like I took a Shroomer back because I had to, like there was nothing else to take. And there's just two other Shroomer players. I'm like, oh, sick. Like we're all fighting each other for sixth. Um, so like there is that, but I think at the current state of Earth, there are just some augments that you just take regardless. So even if you're two-way contested on Demacia, you still take Demacia spat most of the time. I think there was like maybe once or twice in like 20 to 30 games where I'd scout, see like three Demacia players and go, okay, I'm gonna take Gunner. I'm just gonna pivot. But most of the time it's not even correct. So it's a little bit awkward with Earth for sure.
Backing off on that, how did you feel about the patch itself? Like you've talked a lot about the lines and Earth and multicasters and everything like that. I mean, we don't have to deal with the patch anymore. You know, it's okay to give us your true opinion. You know, what were your thoughts on the patch?
The only thing that I thought was like I thought multicasters was a lot weaker than it was. I thought if you played like Creamy, you open fort, you were uncontested, you just get guaranteed first. Like I was willing to accept that. I thought, like if you play this playstyle, you're either going first or eighth, and that's fine. Obviously, everyone in Twitch chat spamming cringe, like multis are winning every game, like it's not fun. I didn't think it was that much of a problem because me as an Earth player, I can just play for those consistent top fours, win out when I hit like 9 Demacia, and never go eighth, right? Because the multiplayer can go eighth. But then as the meta evolved, people realize, oh, you can just play Ezreal tempo, guarantee a top four, and hit Vel'Koz 2, and you top four. And like that was the part where I was kind of like, this is a problem. Like the fact that these players can just top four with Vel'Koz 2 and like all be contesting each other, all hit Vel'Koz 2, that was when it started to become a problem. And then instead of like Vel'Koz meta, it just became, can you hit a Jarvan? If you hit a Jarvan, you top four. And so like that like worked out well for Huey and unfortunate for Kade, they just like couldn't find those Jarvans on level 6. Um, but in terms of like all of the Earth lines, I feel like the meta was actually really favorable for me because I mentioned before that I knew the less optimal Earth lines, and I think now only now players are starting to learn what those suboptimal lines are. Like no one knew about like how to efficiently play around Bruiser. No one like really played Gunner, or at least no one wanted to play Gunner. Um, and I think like a couple of people play like Ionia Vank, but personally, I rarely tailored Ionia Vank because I don't think it's as consistent as some of the other lines that are like A tier as well. And so that was my thoughts on the meta. So I'm glad that multis is definitely nerfed for worlds, but the biggest problem is that Earth wasn't nerfed because now everyone's in all my scrims. Everyone's like eight. There's 8 Earth players, maybe one Ornn like in a blue moon, but it's yeah, it's pretty sad to play honestly. Like I think it gives the weaker regions like a better chance of winning worlds, and I feel like my odds of winning worlds this set is definitely higher than it was last time. But yeah, it is a bit sad to see 8 Earth players every lobby.
Could you talk a little bit more about your preparations and how they're going?
Yeah, so I mean, if you've been seeing me on like Twitch, I've been like streaming some of my scrims. I've also been streaming off stream. Some of my prep involves doing VOD reviews. Um, I'm trying to find a healthy balance because I only had like 4 days to prep, and I didn't want to burn myself out and just play like 20 scrims a day and like VOD review for 5 hours. Like I feel like I'd burn out and then be really unmotivated on Friday. So I'm trying to find like somewhat of a healthy balance. Um, but right now it's just about playing like as many scrims as you can. And I have been testing out some of the other lines because with the new patch update, there's a few different comps you can play. Like I feel like last patch it was impossible to play sorcerers because everyone's holding onto your Vel'Koz. So you're playing sorcerers and you're just praying that you hit Vel'Koz 2. But if you hit Vel'Koz 2 at the same time that the multiplayers hit it, then like a lot of times they just beat you anyway. So I've been trying that. I've been playing a couple of challenger games, invokers, because I don't think there's too much I need to fix with like if I get a Demacia or a Slayer spat, like I'm snap taking it on Worlds, but I've been like purposely not picking the broken 2-1 tomes just because I think that is better to get prep rather than like tunnel in and get your like, get your comfortability. Because you don't learn much from playing the exact same game over and over. Probably on Thursday night, I will take whatever I think is the most broken at the time, just so that I can get in the zone of like you want to win games so you get confidence. I feel like you can throw a lot of scrims early on, get that practice in, but you want to have that confidence going into worlds where like, okay, I'm competing with the best. I can top four when I get my lines, and just stick with that play style.
Curious to know that if in your scrims, I'm assuming that this is against other worlds competitors, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you notice sort
Yep.
of any differences in playstyle or just strategies that are sort of like more region specific, if that makes sense. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
or if the strategies are fairly homogenous and everyone's sort of doing the same thing.
I think NA favors Noxus. I saw a lot of Noxus being played by some of the NA reps. I think Korea specifically, I've been watching Bobe because he performed well at East Asian finals and he's been like a well-known player, so he's always like he's very consistent. And I'd say he's like quite a few tiers above the other Korean reps as well. So I've been watching what he does, and he has a very wide range. Like he plays some very unique comps, and sometimes they do well, sometimes they do poorly. But just studying what he's doing at least allows you to know like when a unique line can actually work. For example, he brought back the Talia set comp, which I hadn't seen since like set 9. So that was like interesting to see, and it actually did quite well. I feel like he kind of low rolled lobby, like everyone was a giga high roll, and so I think he like capped out at like a fifth or a fourth. But like it was cool to see because in any other lobby he definitely would have top 2'd that game. And then like also you see some like more unique lines. I had a really good like six Zorn Gunner was it Graves game, and it's just like I didn't have to do anything. I had 2 styles of everything, and my board was just wiping it. And knowing that you can take Zorn +1 in Placidium Library and play around like Zorn Graves is just like it's like really good to know. And I think I picked that up from the the DSG Toast tournament, and like where they were playing for like the Toast what is it like the organization like getting a
It's
spot
like
on the
a
team.
it's like a contract or something
Yeah,
with
yeah,
his
exactly.
org.
Yeah,
Yeah,
getting the
yeah.
contract, and I don't think they won, but they came first with it in like game 4 or something. Was it David Ass or someone? I can't remember who it was, but that was an interesting line. So I was like, okay, if I get the chance to play it, I'll prep it in scrims. I'm trying to think about the other regions. So that was Korea and NA that I noted. I've played a couple of other games, like the Japanese reps have been in there, and the EMEA, LATAM, but not anything more noticeable. Everyone's just playing Tome. Everyone's just ripping Tome and playing what they get basically.
Fair enough. Yeah, I guess like to sort of extend on that. Um, I'm just having a blank. Yes, sorry. I wanted to also ask, like, do you also feel like right now in scrims, the sort of players are sort of thinking like you, like they don't want to pull out the super try hard lines at the moment. They want to play sort of more experimental stuff. So, I guess the question should be that do you feel like in your scrims right now the games are a lot more sort of like part of the reason why the games are sort of a lot more sort of wide in terms of like lines that people are playing is because that there's still a few more days to try to find new stuff. Yeah.
I don't know too much about finding new stuff, but I do think that there's a lot of multicaster players who are now like, okay, I have to learn like every Earthline. Um, the lobbies definitely feel weaker than what I think they'll feel like on Friday because there are some games where I just play strongest board and then I'm like 70 HP at Wolves, and I just know that if I was playing in East Asian finals like day 1 and 2, like there's no way I'd be 70 HP here because there's sometimes like I look at boards and I'm going, okay, like if they were a good player or if they were like actually trying, they'd roll here. Like there's no way they're just sitting here
Mm.
not rolling on 3-5 and just playing for like a 4-1 roll down. So I definitely think there's that element, but in terms of the lines that they're playing, I think that most people are sticking to meta. Like I said, they rip their tome on 2-1. If they get Noxus spat, they're not going to do anything crazy. They're just going to play Noxus. Like they're not going to try and reinvent the wheel. They know what BIS is. They know how to tempo with Noxus. And so like those players are definitely strong. I have definitely seen people miss on their tomes and then they try to cook up something with like Invoker or some, other random tome like Targon or something, and it usually just doesn't go well. So I'd say like people are definitely a little bit more greedy and probably like not as desperate because the thing about scrims is like you don't need to play for 6. Like if you're going dead last and you could just play for like 7th, you like no one wants to do that, right? Because it's a scrim.
Yep.
But as a whole, I feel like the lines that everyone's playing is like pretty standard. I haven't seen anyone troll too hard, which is good because I feel like everyone has like a bit of like regional pride and going like dead last in scrims like Yeah. I mean, like you can do it for like limit testing and stuff, but it gets to a certain point where I feel like confidence is more important than knowledge because there's not too much more to learn other than being in your comfort zone and having a bit of confidence to back yourself before you go into worlds.
Are you
Yeah.
feeling confident at this point, Tamura? Do you feel like your preparation is going well?
Yeah, honestly, like to be honest, I feel like I was more confident after East Asian finals, but I guess that's because I came off the back of a win and I didn't feel like the competition was that strong in day three. So like I was like we went from like a really hard day one and two, like versing all of the best of O's, and I felt like I had my back against the wall. And then we went into day three, and honestly, it was like it was no flame, but it was definitely a step down. And you could just see like me and Huey were in our comfort zone, and like it was like I don't know, it just felt like very relaxed. And then so I had a lot of confidence. I was like, okay, like Os is definitely winning worlds. And then I started playing scrims, and like scrims have been going fine, but it does definitely feel like an Earth lottery because the thing is, in East Asian finals, these Earth players wouldn't take tome. Like they just take some other garbage augment, and I'd be like, oh, bet, like I rip my tome, and then I just like win the game for free. But now in scrims, it's like everyone rips their tome on 2-1, and so like if you high roll and get Demacia, there's going to be one Noxus player, two other Demacia players, and probably like maybe even a Slayer player. So Mordekaiser is like the most contested unit in scrims right now. So whilst I'm confident with my prep and I'm feeling really good about like my comfortability in my lines, um, it is definitely going to be like a feast or famine when it comes to like finding Mordekaiser to cap your boards.
And talk to me a little bit more about the line specifically. We know you're an Earth player. We don't need to get too much into that. You're saying basically everyone else is playing Earth at the moment too. We just spoke to Huey, whose interview we will air at the end of this episode. And he said that he's got a couple of days left to figure out what he's going to do as a multicaster player. Are you expecting to see a few people from other regions trying out things that aren't Earth? Are you expecting to see anything wacky or anything like that?
Yeah, so we've seen in a lot of the China regionals that they do like Poro. They recognize that if eight players are playing Earth, it's probably not good for the game state. So like you'll see in most of the regionals, there'll be two Poros, six Earth. Because I think if you're willing to play Poro and that you already know six people are hard committed Earth, it's like less incentive to want to join, like to ride the train, and like ride the bus and like join in on them. So I definitely think that China will respect themselves as players to be good enough to play Poro and find other lines that can beat, everyone just like monkey brain only playing Earth and just like ripping Tome 2-1. I do think that Ornn is potentially viable. I know a lot of people think that Ornn is very good for top four strategies. So my guess is that anyone who's comfortable playing around Ornn, they just take Ornn for day one and then reevaluate. Because the thing about day one is you're playing for top four, right? Like you're trying to get to the final lobby, which is top eight, and you don't need to play for first or eighth until day two. I think Kuromex was talking about how he was a split decision between whether he wants to like play Ornn or Earth. Maybe he wants to flex both of them. I think having both of them in your arsenal is definitely a good thing. Um, but I wouldn't expect to see too many legends other than like 80% Earth, maybe like 10% Poro, 10% Ornn, and then like obviously you're randomly gonna see like some other legend appear. But I don't think anything else is gonna be nearly as consistent as those three.
How do you feel overall the implementation of Legends has gone for the game this set? Do you feel like it's been a positive addition?
It's one of those things that's like a nice idea, but almost impossible in practice. So the thing about legends is you can't have TF as a legend giving Pandoras and not expect people to just find out like the broken shit. So I feel like that was always innately going to be a problem. Like I feel like if you think about like when it was first introduced with like Rageblade, Zeke stacking, there's always going to be a problem when Zeri's strong, and then they have to tone down Zeri's numbers, and then once they toned it down enough, it's like everyone stops picking TF, and then it's just an unplayable unit. And the exact same thing will happen with like any other comp, like with Neela. Like they had to nerf Neela over and over just because they know that if someone wants to, they can play TF and get double RFCGS every single game. And so that was a problem. And then Earth, the way Mortdog spoke about it in the sense that he thinks that 9 traits are where they want to be. They're just too easy to get to. Well, if that's the case, you just have to get rid of Earth. You can't have Earth as a legend if you want the 9 traits to be this powerful. And so I think that whilst it's a cool idea, I really like the fact that like casters can talk about the legend choices, in the loading screen, because there's not much to talk about when you're casting and like the game's already happened. There's only so much you can say about the ending. I think it's really cool that like players have an identity going into tournaments where it actually is an identity. It's not just everyone's playing Earth or everyone's playing Ezreal or everyone's playing TF. It's like different players have different strategies. I like and respect the fact that Chalks was playing Draven. He was like one of the only Draven players because he knew the line well and he knew how to play aggressively. You had your TF players, you had your Ezreal players. And I just think that was really cool. The fact that you could like switch it up, like something's not working, and you've got like 4 games left to play. All right, I'm gonna switch it up, and I'm gonna play for a comeback here. And I think it was really really good idea in practice, both for casual players and competitive play. But I don't believe there's a way to balance it. I think it's nearly impossible, and so I'm not sad to see them go.
You're somebody who has done a bit of both worlds in this sense. You've been a part of events where you're not playing. You've watched events, you create content on YouTube, and you're also a two-time world representative. I know it's a bit of a strange question, but which do you enjoy more? Do you like creating TFT content? Do you like being a pro? Do you feel like you're getting better at doing both at the same time? Where's the balance there for you?
I'd say like for starters, like with the casting, that this is my first time doing it this set, and so like that was like it was a very like very very enjoyable experience, and it was something that I like never really saw myself doing because I always saw myself as playing. I definitely like every time if I get to play in the tournament, I'm gonna choose to play in the tournament over casting because play like being a player comes first. So I'd say there is no better feeling than qualifying for the next day of a tournament or like winning or like better than that like winning tournaments and so like chasing that rush definitely just makes it worth like you can go like dead last in like 3 tournaments, 4 tournaments in a row, but then you're chasing that one win, and then on the final tournament where you do well, like it makes it all worth it. The amount of hours I put into this game, like prepping on my own, prepping in groups, watching VODs and stuff, it makes it all worth it. When you finally get that one moment where you do well in a tournament, and so that definitely comes first. And then like with casting and content creation, I'd say it's about the same. I really really enjoyed casting and I got into it. And because it was my first time, like I was always looking to improve, and I felt like I got better as the days progressed. And so then that like learning feedback and positive feedback I got from the other casters was really like memorable. And so if I don't do well in next set, I'll definitely be looking to do more casting. And then content creation always has a soft spot. I've always been passionate about video editing. I've been doing it since I was like probably 10 years old. I used to so when I started, it was I don't know if you guys ever saw like with Dude Perfect, like the ping pong trick shots, how you like bounce the ball into the cup. That was like when I first started getting into video editing. And so ever since like I started making those videos with my friends, yeah, I got into gaming and then obviously wanted to keep editing. So yeah, that's the story of me getting into editing, and I've always got a soft spot for YouTube. And then of course Twitch is like an extension of that. I always have fun on Twitch.
We spoke about this last time as well. You made Rust content for a long time, didn't you?
hmm
Yeah. Do you ever miss it?
Um, Yeah, I miss the game, but unfortunately, the game state that it's in now, I don't see it ever going back to a spot where I'd actually want to devote time into it. Which is a shame because I put a lot of hours not only into the game but also into content creation. Um, not just for the passion of the fact that I really enjoyed the game and I really enjoyed the content creation, but I could actually see myself as going down that as a career path because I knew that once I got to a critical point in my YouTube channel, I could extend it to Twitch and actually, start to make like a living off of that side. And so I knew that was a possibility, so I put in like a lot of hours even when I was unmotivated to do so. But unfortunately, not unfortunately, because the game that kind of took me away from Rust was TFT. So fortunate in the end, but at the time it was kind of like, oh, I'm not really enjoying this. I'm just going to devote my time to elsewhere and just focus on like on my work outside of gaming. Um, but like it's one of those things that I have friends with that still play it on occasion, and I like would be more than happy to play it on like let's say I have like a week break, like World's Ends and PBE's not out for another couple of weeks. Like I'm more than happy to go back and like check it out, but I can't ever see myself going back to creating content for it just because the game state had too many bad updates after bad updates, and it's just not the game that it used to be.
I guess my final question on that line before we sort of get directly back to TFT is the future of content creation for TFT and the future of TFT is going to look very different now than it does this week and next week. Set 10's coming out soon. Is it something that you're actively looking forward to? You've already mentioned that you're, it's hard to balance legends. You're glad that they're gone. What kind of direction do you want to see TFT head in for set 10?
What I want to see it head into is the flex play that rewards um HP preservation, making correct decisions, and being able to actually flex between your units. I think the biggest problem with this set was that the fact that TF can be a legend and be useful is innately a problem because if you can greed for BIS and outcap other boards, like sure, BIS should be a thing. But I think you should be able to like you should be cutting off lines on 2-1 when you slam like your first item. And so I really liked it when there's meta where you can slam Rage Blade and flex between 2 to 3 different units. Like you're not locked into to one unit. So I hope that in the future I get to play around my comfort of playing fast 8 and just being able to flex between different units. One thing I also would like to bring back is an econ trait. I think that's more of just like a personal preference of I really like the fact that on ladder I can play like I can play Astrals or Yordles and make good econ and go for the fast 8-4-2. And then it felt balanced enough in set 7 where I remember when I went to Worlds, like you couldn't just play econ opener every game, and I'm sure that was the same for like a lot of the other games, a lot of the other sets where on ladder you can play Yordle opener every single game and you'll be fine. But then once you get to the world stage and everyone's actually playing proper boards, you can't really afford to do that. And if they can find that balance again, then I'd be really happy to see that into set 10.
Let's get
Yeah,
back on track.
bringing the bringing the convo back a bit into more sort of strategy. I'm kind of curious to sort of hear your thoughts on playing like heavily contested lines. Saw this a lot in regionals where a lot of players were playing basically the exact same like multicaster line or the exact same earth line. I guess my question is that do you have any sort of key insights on how to do well when you're for example you're playing Demacia and there's like 3 or 4 other Demacia players in your lobby all looking for the exact same units.
Yeah, so the biggest thing you need to know, and this was what was really helpful uh going into day 1 and 2 of regionals, you need to know what the other players are thinking and what they're likely to do. So for example, when I'm versing Angora, I know that if he gets like so okay, I'll give you an example of like one game when I was playing around Azir in one of the games. I was two-way contested. So Angora took Shroomer Spat on 2-1, and Ron also had Shroomer Spat from his tome. So I knew, okay, this game is all going to be about piloting who can get the Nasus to Azir to. And so the two options you have is if you're win streaking, like I was really rich that game. I had an econ opener. I think it was the Yordles portal or whatever it's called now, where you get the extra champions. Um, and so like I knew I was rich enough for a 4-2, but it's basically just a question of if I 4-2 it, are all the Azirs going to be gone? And so the entire game, I was scouting both Ron and Angora's boards, and you need to figure out, looking at their spot, when are they going to send it to 0? Because as soon as Angora was level 7 on 3-5 and he gets an Azir off of Carousel, like I know he's going to send it to 0. He's never going 8 this game. Like he's always going to roll down. And then so if I saw Ron's spot and I thought Ron was going to send it to 0 like in the next turn, even though I have the position to fast 8, I have to send it to 0. Like there's no other choice. It worked out well where I think Ron ended up going fast 8 and Angora had already sent it to 0, and I just got luckier that Ron didn't hit Aziz and I did. But like that kind of thinking is how you should be analyzing your games, where you need to look at other players, recognize what they do, and adapt to it. And so obviously, like the ideal situation is you roll down on 7 and hit before them. But there are some games where, like, let's say that Ron and Angora had already naturaled Azir 2, or they'd already naturaled like a lot of pairs. For me, from that spot, it's better for me to just like take my HP advantage, my econ advantage, go fast 8, and then pivot into a suboptimal board that utilizes legendaries. One of the VOD reviews I did with Angora and Kare, I think, was when I was fast. I was like fast 8. I ended up being fast 9. But Nedpool was holding on to like 5 Azirs, and I think someone else had Azir 2. So there was like no Azirs left for me to play. And what they recognized was that I could have rolled down on 8 and played 2 Shreema. So even though I had a Shreema +1 and I had BIS Azir items and everything really good, I had to recognize that my spot, I had to actually play 2 Shreema and just play a regular board and then go for like a fourth from that spot. Because I had so much HP, I had so much gold. But what ended up happening was I waited for Nedpool to die, and unfortunately he died like one turn before I needed him to die, which made me go 6th. And so like it's those types of games where you're contested, you need to recognize, okay, I can't play for top 2 this game. And it's really hard to do that because when your spot is so much better than the other players, you're just thinking like you're just sitting there in spite. You're like, oh, I'm richer than you, I have more HP than you, I should be like winning this game. I shouldn't be playing for a fourth. But it's a bit of like a hot-headed ego thing where you need to go, okay, unlucky. Like this is just how the cards fell. I need to play for a fourth from that spot, and that's just something that you need to recognize when you're playing in like a very high level.
It's very insightful. I had another question that's actually kind of interesting. It's specifically to do with portal selection. I guess I was just curious to hear your thoughts on, are there any other sort of strategic or implications at the start of the game when it comes to selecting portals, other than just simply picking the portal that suits your legend the best?
Yeah, so the obvious answer is that like everyone wants to pick Earth. I think from a preference stand, I like a lot of the econ portals. Like I'm as a player a lot more comfortable playing around like Fleshing Arena or Scuttle Puddle. Just because when you have access to the tome, you can make 10 on 2-1 and then like put yourself in a really, really good spot. I usually just try and stay away from the RNG ones. So previously I tried to stay away from ones like Maris or Magnum, where you just get like two Tactician's
Hmm.
Crowns. Obviously it's really, really good for Earth. But it just gives so much RNG. And so, whilst there are ones like Placidium Library, God's Willows Groves, where you're pretty much always supposed to take it as an Earth player, there are regions that sound good for an Earth player, but they're not. There's too much RNG, and so if I back myself as a player, I would usually rather just take the more consistent regions that aren't going to screw my game over, and just try and play for placements there.
Do you have anything on that line as well? There's oftentimes portions of tournaments, and especially very closed tournaments with not too many players, where there's one or two people in your lobby who maybe have less to play for than everybody else. How do you feel about those kind of games when you get to the point where somebody's just standing or multiple people are standing on portals that you know are really going to mess up your game? What's your thought process like in that instance?
Or basically just trying to like keep calm and like not flame the hell out of them. But you'll definitely get those. I mean, we got one we like when one person stands on a portal, you know they have plot armor. Like the amount of times you get one guy is definitely it's definitely not 1 out of 8. Like it's never a 1 out of 8. There's no way. And then like even in East Asian finals, I think it was actually correct. Someone stood on Stillwater Hold when half the region was Earth, and I feel like that actually made me really dizzy. And I think I that was one of the worst games I played in that tournament. Um, and so like I mean like good job to them. They recognize like this is actually probably the correct portal to stand on. And so like you can't be too mad about it. Like especially when someone's taking a competitive edge. Like let's say someone's playing Draven. I think Chorfs was playing Draven and they chose the Sump, which obviously makes sense when you're playing like just tempo trying to kill units. And like you can't get mad at them when they're choosing a portal that matches them. The part that you do tilt over a little bit is when you know that they're out, they can't qualify, and they just choose a portal for fun. They're not actually trying to like play for a top four. They're just like they've locked in ASOL and they've chosen like some garbage portal just because they want to they choose shifting sands or something because they just want to play for a 3-star forecast and like have fun in their own game. Um, I just like try not to get too mad about it, but it's like yeah, it is a little bit disrespectful when you're like you're out and you're just like not playing with competitive integrity because technically you are supposed to try and play for play for your top placements at all stages, even if you know that you can't qualify. But it's something you kind of just have to laugh off and not tilt too much because you still have games to play.
Can you talk about that that sort of emotional reaction coming into play when you're playing the games? Like I guess my first question before we go deeper into this is what time is the tournament for you?
I think it's at 8 p.m. So I'll be fine. Like it'll be 8 p.m. till like 2 a.m. I'm obviously gonna have energy drinks. What we play six games in like 4 to 5 hours. So I'll finish like pretty early, right? I'll finish before like 1 a.m. 1 a.m. or 2 like that's fine for me. So I don't think that's too much of a problem. Sorry, what was the second part of the question? Which is
No,
like
no, I just wanted to
preparation or
I
just the
wanted to
time?
hear that I wanted to hear that first, like your timing. You're a TFT player. You can stay up till 1 a.m. That's totally fine.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So I guess like my question for you is like most of the worlds tournaments that we've had and most of the major events that we've had that have OCE players involved are in those kind of time zones. So I guess I wanted to hear from you, like you said energy drinks, maybe you got a cup of coffee, maybe you're sitting there, maybe you take some pre-workout or something like that. I don't know. Like what are your strategies going to be to keep yourself focused and mentally organized for the event?
Yeah, so I'll probably like do some VOD reviews. I think the most important thing is that so it's on a Friday, that's what it starts. I have work off, I'll sleep in, and then I'll do some VOD reviews like probably in the like the start of the day, or I'll just like play a couple scrims if people are around. And then I think the most important thing is that like for the 3 to 4 hours leading up to Worlds, I mentally check out. I'll go to the gym, go for a run, like eat some food, like talk to my family, do something other than hyper stressed about TFT. Because all this prep for the last month or two has been leading up to this moment. And so it's kind of like when you're studying for an exam. Like I never study in the last hour before exam because I think it's like the stress that it develops for me is like not worth it. Obviously, there are some situations where like you need to study because there's a couple things you're missing. But like at that point, you should be kind of kicking yourself because you probably should have done it like I don't know a few days before or a week before. So that'll be my strategy. The fact that the game started at 8 p.m. like I won't be tired at 8. I'll probably treat myself to an iced coffee. Um, I've been cutting for the last 2 months, so I had my first iced coffee on regionals because I basically hadn't drank one in 2 months and it was so delicious. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it. So I'll probably reward myself and have another one at Worlds. So I'll probably have an iced coffee, and then like if I need more caffeine, I'll have an energy drink on game like 4. But there's a good chance the iced coffee will just carry me through.
I guess my final question for you on this specific line is, can you help me with my cut after I get over this COVID?
Of course, of course. If you
Yeah,
ever have any
thanks.
questions, yeah, ever had any questions about like diet or any of that kind of stuff, more than happy to chat. Same. That invitation extends to chat as well. If you guys want to talk, if you guys want to talk fitness or anything other than TFT, then always happy to chat with people in the Twitch chat.
Guys, we're going to start a new podcast called Cutting with Cutler and Tamura. So we're going to do we're going to do an OCE Giga Chad podcast. Let's get back onto TFT specifically. Although we did talk a little bit about the East Asian finals, what we actually haven't heard from you in the most from this is sort of how it felt to actually win day 3. You know, day 1 and day 2 you really sort of hit the pinnacle there. You're going to Worlds, you come back, you say it's like super easy, you just roll all these bots, you know, like what was that day 3 like for you?
Yeah, so I was definitely you can tell from my reaction in making Worlds versus winning East Asian Finals, I was a lot more excited. Not a lot more, but like I was more excited to win Worlds. Not win Worlds, to go to Worlds, sorry. Win Worlds later. But yeah, so I was like really excited then. Yeah, it was weird because you're kind of TFT'd out at that point. Like I've done LCQ, I've done Bruiser, I've been scrimming and VOD reviewing like every day for that week. Then I play 2 back-to-back days of 6 games a day, and then you VOD review after those 6 games. So it's like it's a lot of TFT. Um, and then going to the final day, it's kind of like, well, you've already made it. You're just playing for prize money, and obviously, from my financial position, it's a lot of prize money. It's like a very significant check to take home. So I'm super grateful that that Mort Dog blessed me. But yeah, like I said before, honestly, the quality of play was weaker. I think that the OS players were better than the final lobby, and so that I just knew that me and Huey were gonna do well. And after like game 1, when me and Huey went like 1-2 with like no like we didn't put anything in. I feel like we just kind of cruised through that game and it was fine. At that point, I was kind of relaxed. I was like, all right, like me and Huey can actually like win this tournament. We'll just keep playing like the way we're doing, and I just need to relax and like not get overstressed. And yeah, and it worked out well.
Could you talk a little bit about your relationship with Huey? Are you going to be doing any review with Huey specifically? Are you guys going to be working together coming up in the next? I guess I should date this. You know, it's Wednesday afternoon now, basically. So you've got about 2 days left before the event. Are you going to be chatting with Huey, working with Huey for these next 2 days?
Yeah, so because he played Ezreal into multis, like he had a lot of questions regarding Earth, and I basically just like gave him like the rundown and answered like any of the questions that he had relating to it. I do believe there's a chance that he's sticking to Ornn and having a similar playstyle and maybe not picking up Earth because it's a lot to pick up Earth in 4 days. I think that players had a disadvantage when they only had 1 week to prep for Earth because I was coming off of like 2 weeks for LCQ and then like a month leading into the East Asian finals. And so the recommendations from some of the top players might be for Huey to just stick with the playstyle that he knows and play around that Ornn. But in terms of preparation, like I'm always happy to do VOD reviews with Huey and just like talk about the different games, and just answer any questions, feed off of each other. And but he's definitely a player that's a player that preps more by playing. So I get a little bit burnt out by playing too many games, and then I like to relax and do VOD reviews. But he's a madman. He'll finish an OQ, he'll like win an OQ and then just go queue up on ladder. Like as soon as the OQ started, he's like back on the grind. So he's a bit of a madman when it comes to ladder. And so I feel like a lot more of his prep is like him just spamming games and then asking questions later. And so yeah, we have a good relationship. The entire OS community is like super wholesome, and it's great talking and bouncing ideas off of everyone. And so that's the plan of the last 2 days because yeah, it is pretty rushed. And I think he has work as well. I've got work on Thursday. I took Tuesday and Wednesday off, but I think Huey might have been working this week as well.
Tell me,
Looking
oh,
ahead a
sorry.
bit.
No, no,
Oh,
Sol, you
sorry.
go. No, good timing. You
Oh
got it.
no, I mean, I was actually gonna ask that. Like, looking ahead, I was actually really curious. In the sense that you mentioned that you're competing in the Vegas Open.
Mhm.
Going to be the the biggest proper like LAN competitive LAN event. I think it's basically the first of its kind. I guess what are your thoughts? What are your overall thoughts on LANs, like competitive LANs for TFT? Are they something you would like to see more of? Do you prefer if they stay in this sort of individual like sort of format, or if would you prefer that they become an actual part of the actual sort of competitive circuit itself?
So the biggest thing that would actually make it worthwhile for a lot of competitive players is if they kind of like if they made a LAN and they had like two brackets maybe like a more for fun like anyone can join this one. But the biggest problem is that they wanted it to be not worlds, which I completely respect. But the problem is players need to spend minimum 3 grand to get there with flights, probably more like 4 grand if you include accommodation in your tickets. Which just isn't worth it when you only guaranteed 3 games. And so I can see why a lot of people were interested in it because it's the first of its kind. Like we know it's going to be amazing. But looking forward, they really need to kind of like change the format. So like at least guarantee 5 games. Like 5 games isn't even enough, but I think that at least like if you're a top player and you back yourself, um, you can probably beat out most of the competition, especially if half of them are GM and the other half are like lower end of challenger. But yeah, like even 5 games is enough. I'm super excited to go. I bought my ticket before I even knew that I had a chance at making regionals. I just thought it would be something that I wouldn't want to miss. And it was a little bit awkward because I wasn't like super close with any of the other people going at the time. And so I was kind of just like sat there like, okay, this is a lot of money to invest. Do I really want to go? But then it came down to the point where it's like, like I'm working and, like I'm working all years. Like I wanted to do like summer holiday of some kind. And I just thought this is the best thing that's ever going to happen to me. Like this is the best opportunity to go on a holiday and meet all of these people. And then when I found out that a lot of the other Southeast Asian players and New Zealand players were going, like or the Australians as well, I was like, oh okay, like now it's good. Once I found out that like Angora, Keith, and all that Jose, they were buying their tickets on stream, I was like, okay, well at least there'll be like some people that I know. But I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think the format could use a little bit of work, but I just think as an event as a whole, it'll just be such an unforgettable experience.
Can I ask you on that point, because our goal for 2024 is to create a live event of similar ilk for OCE. Like, what are some things that you would like to see in that respect? Do you have ideals and goals? You mentioned that you want more games and that kind of thing. What would get you to like an OCE LAN event with challenger players?
The thing about OS is like the tickets are a lot cheaper to go go fly over to like the East Coast. So if you guys said we're having an OS like an OS LAN and we're playing five like three okay, maybe not 3 games. If you said oh we're playing 5 games, even if you said you were playing 3 games, I'd probably just show up because like you just fly over and then like you stay for a couple of nights and then you just go home. Like that feels a lot better than forking out like 4 grand to go like fly over to Vegas. Um, but I like for me personally, I don't think there's much. I don't think you need to do much to get me to come to an OS LAN event. If you guys even just had one and I got to meet everyone and play for a couple of games, like I'd be happy. Um, but for the other players who might not be as invested, I think that the biggest thing would probably be just uh like making it a memorable event where it's not so much that you're just showing up, sitting on a computer and playing your 5 games and then going back to your hotel and going. Uh, like I like the idea that Vegas has got these other things in the background because like everyone's gonna get knocked out on day one. Like so many people are gonna be gone. So then you have 2 other days of the tournament where it's like, okay, what are you doing? And so the fact that they're organizing all of these other like fun events, I've heard like rumors and different things that they're doing. That's probably like what you would need on a small scale for OS. Because other players would be in a similar boat where they might not necessarily want to come, but if they know that it's going to be a memorable weekend, they might not necessarily win, but they know they're going to have a good fun time, like meeting everyone and playing in these extra like fun games on the side. Then I think it'll be worthwhile and everyone will want to go.
All right, guys, write that down. In 2024, when we do our OCE live event, we can thank Tamura for some really good ideas there, and we will be tuning in. I really wanted to go to Vegas, by the way. It's on my birthday. However, unfortunately, it didn't quite work out. So there's always next year. I wanna talk a little bit more about region strength specifically. One of the biggest questions going into any of these kind of events really is like, oh, who's playing really well? Who's surprised you? Who aren't you expecting, or who haven't you been expecting? There's only like very few people who you will have interacted with during Set 7 Worlds. I think there's only three return competitors from Set 7, if I remember. I was trying to look it up today.
Title from Japan, Tech Summers, from was he from Argentina?
Yeah.
Um, and then I don't know too many other players. I know there's returning players. I don't know if any
Mm.
other ones came from Set 7 though. And then obviously me and Huey. Was there a third one that I forgot
I
from the
I
other
think I
players?
was including Huey there basically. I think so.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess talk to me a little bit about like region strength, like where you are feeling everybody out at the moment. Where do you feel everybody is? That kind of thing.
We haven't had too many scrims with the Chinese players. I think they've shown up. They always have like weird names of like a tournament. It sounds like a broadcaster like IGN. Like it's I don't think it's actually their IGN, but they'll like play on it. I think even Tanner was spectating a lot of the games. And then one of the games when we needed an eight to fill in, he actually subbed. But I've watched a lot of their regionals and I know that they're all obviously really great players. Some of the NA players are like surprisingly good dark horses, like they're good underdogs. Because if you watched any of the NA regionals, you saw that a lot of the goats got knocked out quite early on, and even Milk and Soju unfortunately just couldn't close it out on the final game. And so it was quite sad to see like a lot of my favorite names not make it from NA. Um, but I've been talking to a lot of other players, top tier players who know some of these other players. I think a couple of them were like prepping with a Riri play as well. And so like these new rookies coming in are actually like quite good at the game. So I think like NA, I feel like NA will be a hit or miss. I feel like one of the underdogs is just gonna like soar through the competition, like Rain did in Set 7, and just like make final day lobby and surprise everyone. And then one's going dead last. That's like my prediction for NA. I feel like it's gonna be a complete coin flip for those two. I think as a region, OCE is very strong. Like with me and Huey, like we obviously have shown that we can compete well, not just like on ladder, but also like in a tournament environment, like very consistent. Like Huey's obviously a beast across all tournaments. I also wanted to shout out Huey. I might be misquoting him, but unless I'm wrong, wasn't he like 8-8 in like in our regionals for Set 7, and then just went like 1-1-1? Like the mental fortitude of Huey is absolutely insane. Because I know a lot of other players in his spot in Set 7 would have mentally checked out, tilted, and probably like never made worlds in Set 7. So the fact that he has that backing him is super crucial when we have 12 games. Like you can go 8-8 on day one and still like do really really well. So you need to have that mental fortitude. Um, and then like yeah, I won't flame like one region in particular, but I have not been impressed by any of the other regions that I've mentioned. Obviously, Title's really good. I think last time that we went in Set 7, like Title was he was miles better than the other players in the area. The other Japanese rep that got through, I think he was a rookie as well, and like bless him. I think he was like he had a family and kids, and like he was like obviously TFT was more of like a side thing for him. So like fair enough that he didn't perform as well, but I think that Title's very consistent. He plays on NA. He's constantly like top 10 challenger. Like Title's a beast. And I don't know too much about most of the other regions. Like I haven't like studied LATAM or EMEA as much, but I wasn't as impressed by their games in Set 7. Um, so I didn't really want to spend too much of my time like watching their regionals.
Yeah, understandable.
I actually had a question, specifically, to do with ladder, actually. Do you only play sort of on OCE, or do you spread some of your games out onto other servers, like NA, for example?
So last time I prepped, I had an NA account because I think it's very crucial that you have an NA account once the OS ladder is dead because it does die after all the snapshots are done. Like as soon as snapshots are over, basically no one's playing it. Even like the day before snapshots is over, it dies because everyone's LP sitting, so like no one's playing.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, this set I was working pretty much full time, so I just did not have the time to grind an NA account. I'd basically just play on OS. I'd play like 3 to 5 games a night and then just call it a day. I just realized from scrims I wanted to shout out the Southeast Asian players. I just realized that they didn't have a slot when we went in set 7 worlds, but this set they do have a slot and they had one last year, right? They're really good. I've seen like a lot of their games and their spots and their lines look solid. So shout out to them as well.
I guess finishing off with like a couple more questions just about Worlds specifically. You know, we talked a little bit about mentality. We've talked about the other players. We've talked about working with Huey. We've talked about yourself. I want to know, like, specifically for you, you've mentioned VOD review, you've mentioned scrims. Where like does VOD review is VOD review more important than scrimming for you? Do you find it more beneficial, less beneficial, equally beneficial? Like where are you on the sort of the hierarchy between playing games and reviewing your own games?
So the biggest thing about VOD reviewing is it depends on who's in your call. So the better the players that are VOD reviewing with you, the more important VOD reviewing is. If you had to choose one between scrimming and VOD reviewing, you'd always take VOD reviewing. I don't think it's even close. Because the thing about scrimming is that yes, it allows you to play at a high caliber where you're versing better players, but you can kind of get that experience on ladder, especially when it's a competitive time. Like when ladder snapshots are at its peak and everyone's playing for snapshots. If I queue into a lobby and it's like 5 or 6 challenges, like I'm gonna get the same experience I will get when I'm scrimming. But when it comes to VOD reviewing, is it's so hard for you to recognize your own mistakes. And when you're VOD reviewing and you make like dumb mistakes and you tell the other people in the call, you're like, oh yeah, I stuffed up here. Like you know you're not gonna make that mistake again, or you know at least like it's a dumb mistake that you can't like snap call fix. But there's so many little things that make big differences that I would never have seen if I wasn't playing with other players. So I'd say VOD reviewing is top tier. With the other two options like scrims and then ladder, I guess they're all kind of the same. Um, Obviously like scrimming is important for me as a player, I feel like I control my nerves a little bit better, so the value of practicing that isn't as crucial. But I think for some players, they get really, really flustered when they play tournament, and so I think that for them, if they've got their lines down packed, then the value of scrimming under a high stress environment would probably be worthwhile.
When it comes to VOD reviewing, I'm kind of curious. Do you sort of just go into them, with a bunch of people in core, and you sort of just like take it as it comes, freestyle, like just point out things as they show up, or do you sort of try to go in like really trying to sort of focus in on specific aspects of your game, like really focus on early game or really focus on mid game and etc. etc.
When I so basically like I'll sometimes do it in group calls. Like sometimes you do one on one because sometimes when you do one on one it's actually better. There's less noise in the call. When you have a bunch of people bouncing off different ideas, everyone's gonna have conflicting opinions, and then it gets a little bit harder to actually flesh it out. I don't ever do like only an early game VOD review or only a late game VOD review. Basically, I'm always just watching at 2x speed and then skipping parts that I know are boring. Like we'll have some games where like I was watching, for example, on stream the other day with Keith, where I had an opener. We talked about it. We talked about the early game, and then I think it was on 3-5. I did my roll down. I pivoted to the 4 Slayer 7 Demacia board or something, and then he recognized from that game. He's like, "Oh, you don't lose another round here, do you?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "Okay, well, there's not much point in like VOD reviewing the rest of it. You might as well just like skip to the next game because time is a resource, and like you don't need to.
Mm.
You're more likely to find mistakes in other games, or at least find like crucial errors. So that's one thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, like that's basically how I try and do it. I think VOD reviewing is really important, but it's really boring doing it alone. So, like, try and find some friends around similar skill levels to you, and then yeah, hop in call with them, and then obviously always just return the favor. Like if they ever need it, then you're there for them, and then it's kind of like a mutually beneficial relationship.
Mhm.
I guess we can't get you out of here today without asking you a one final sort of big serious question. And this is just mostly for my pickums more than anything. How are you going to perform this Worlds tomorrow? Is this a top 8? Is this a I'm champion, no worries, I'm out of here, easy peasy?
Oh, this is a play for first, win out the whole thing, and then go to Vegas like a king. Already got my accommodation and flights paid for, but I want to show up wearing my TFT merch, my 77 shirt, and people know who I am. People
Wearing
know
like a
me as the
coat
guy
of
from
money.
OCE. Exactly. Just representing OCE. They'll like people will show up and they'll say, "Oh, that's Soju. Like, can I get a picture with him? Like, he's the most famous Twitch streamer." But then they'll see me and they'll go, "That's the OCE guy. Like, I know the OCE guy." And yeah, and then that's my hope. I get at least one guy that asks for a picture from Vegas. That's the plan.
Hashtag the OCE guy. Guys, we've hit you for about an hour here. There is sort of one more final bit of the podcast to get onto, and that is our brief little interview that we recorded with Huey. It's about 15 minutes. Please do stick around to watch that. For now, however, this is the point of the show where we like to specifically thank our guest for coming on. Tamura, do you have, where can everybody find you? You know, of course, most people who listen to this do know who you are already, but where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, so just Tomorrow77 on Twitch, Tomorrow77 TFT on YouTube. You can find my guides, and then Twitter is Tomorrow77 underscore YouTube or YT. Yeah.
Guys, this has been a very special episode of the Roll Down. The next time you hear from us, we will be reviewing Worlds. We may even have Tamura back on celebrating his win in a big Ose cape, you know, draped in a flag. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen, but one thing's for sure is we're super excited to see him perform this weekend. Sol, thank you so much as ever for being my fantastic co-host. Is there where can people find you on the internet?
It's been great to be here. I'm Sol_TFT on Twitch. I am eagerly waiting for Set 10 so I can start streaming again. So yeah.
Yeah, guys, we haven't done much streaming basically since Tamura went to Worlds last time. So once the game comes back into a really good spot, we'll be there. But guys, thank you for listening to this portion of the roll down. Please do stick around. I'm going to just show you guys the interview that we did with Huey earlier, and then we will get out of here. Until then, thank you so much to Sol and Tamura for joining me. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
We will see you soon. Thanks, Tamura. Guys, just chatting for a brief second while I bring this up. I know this is a bit of a confusing portion of the podcast. So just so you're both aware, I've clicked the route by introducing you. All right, I have it ready. I think who you are, and what you're up to, and then we'll just sort of dive straight into. All right, let's do this. And things like that.
Yeah, sure. I'm Huey. I've been playing TFT for quite a while now. I played in set 1, but pretty casually until set 5. Started competing in 6.5. I joined the OQ, but I didn't qualify. So I had to sweat for snapshot, and I finally made it through to regionals in 6.5. I made final lobby, and I went 5th. And KNP and TXC, they made it to Worlds that year. After that, I got pretty hooked onto TFT, playing every day. Set 7, I really grinded it out, and I made it to Worlds. Set 8, I did grind, but not as much, so I did fall short. I didn't make it to Worlds, but we're back here again in set 9, so yeah.
Before we get into some serious questions, I guess my first question for you is how does it feel to be back at Worlds this time around? You know, like you said, you got to Worlds the first time around after only being a competitive player for about a year. What's it feel like now to be back again?
It feels great, of course. Also feel relieved. I put in a lot of work, and the work paid off. Um, it does feel bad for the other competitors. I know they work hard as well, so it's kind of bittersweet in that way.
How do you feel the patch going into our equivalent of regionals and of course the East Asia finals? How do you feel that the patch for this event set you up?
Um, I don't like the patch in the way how you're very limited in how you can play the game. I think the only two ways you could play the game is by either picking Earth, going for vertical traits, or picking Ezreal or TF, leaning into multi or even a Nyla comp. Fortunately for me, there were quite a lot of Earth players. There were 5 Earth players, and mainly me and Kade playing multis. So I had a lot of practice playing multis contested, so I feel like that was my best option, and that's how I went with the tournament. Yeah.
Sol, your turn to ask questions. Really, I think I know you've got some great ones for Huey here.
Yeah. So the main question I had prepared was that you're known for being a very very dedicated player on ladder. Especially like logging in sort of many games. Like looking at like your log chest, you know, you had 1.1k games in set 9. Not as many in this current set, but yeah, a lot of games, right? So I guess yeah, my question to you is that when it comes to strong ladder players, many like other similarly strong ladder players in various regions, they tend to have difficulty sort of translating that ladder success into tournament success. But that hasn't quite been the case for you, who, you know, you mentioned that, you know, you started quite recently, right, in like set 6.5, and, you know, only a couple sets later, you've, you know, now going to be a 2 times world's rep. For you, are there sort of any decisive factors in how you approach the game that sort of like lets you do well in tourneys as well as ladder?
I feel like when I play to learn. Either win or lose, I'll be picking up something every game. So I'm not just mindlessly going around playing games. I'm actively trying to learn each game, especially the early game. I try to work on the fundamentals. I try to play my strongest sport every game. So I feel like that's where my strength is. Um, just building a good board in the early game, and I can practice that every game.
Awesome.
And
And sort of to piggyback off that question, when it's like when basically like when you're preparing for like these like sort of big events, right? Other than just sort of playing the games on ladder, as you just mentioned, you like to thoughtfully think about your games. Do you do much work sort of like outside of the game itself? Do you like to study stats? Do you watch streams? Yeah. Do you like do any other things to improve? Yeah, to improve.
Yeah, I do pretty much all of the above. So I play the game as usual, but I do watch more streams than usual, just to have a better read on the meta. Mostly watch NA top players, to see what they think. This event specifically was different, because of the way it's played. I didn't watch any Earth players. Usually, I would watch everyone, to get a wider variety of knowledge. But I didn't watch Earth players because I knew I wasn't going to play Earth. I mainly watched Kurum, and DQA, who were playing Ezreal, and I watched Robin, who was playing TF. He played Nyla and Multi with TF.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's how I prepped for this tournament. Just playing a lot of games and also watching streamers that would be playing a similar play style to me.
Huey, when did you come up with the decision that you were this was the play style you were gonna stick towards? You mentioned there that you didn't even want to watch people that were playing Earth. When did you come to that conclusion during your like preparation for these events?
Yeah, so I actually haven't played a single game of Earth throughout the whole set 9.0, 9.5. So I didn't think I would try picking up so late into the tournament. So I just realized I would have two choices, Poro or Ezreal. And after watching quite a few streams, I decided I'll just go with Ezreal. And this was before Bruiser Cup. So that's 1 week before the Asia Cup finals. And I had a different plan then. I would play Ezreal, flex Azir, and flex Multi. Later on, I realized that plan wasn't very good. I just straight up played Multi every chance I got and ditched Azir. Yeah.
What led you to, as you put it, ditching Azir? How did you come to that conclusion
Yeah.
specifically?
So I played a ton of games of basically flexing Azir and Multi, and I would bot for every game I played Azir and top for every game I played Multi. So like it costs too much to build the Azir board, and it's just straight up weaker than a board that costs less gold. So there really is no point to play Azir unless you're really high rolling,
Mhm.
like like out of your mind basically. Um, Yeah, so I just decided on multis. I was open to all the other comps. I did play, I think, 8 games of multi and 4 games of non-multi in the East Asia finals. So I was open to other comps, but I was very heavily leaning into multi.
What brought you, I guess, aside from the obvious about how the patch was organized. Going into specifically the East Asia finals, did you feel like multicasters was going to be the thing that everybody was going to play? Did you feel like you might be alone? I know you mentioned Kade there as someone who played the same legend as you. Did you think
Yeah.
that, oh, this might be my best opportunity here in this specific playstyle?
Yeah. So because we had the Bruiser Cup a week before, we already knew each other's legend and how everyone played. Um, None of the other players really were playing multi. They might have played one game if they had a really good spot. Apart from that, it was just me and Kade who would be leaning towards multi. Also, we had quite a few scrims beforehand with the other regions, Japan and Korea, where it was just me and Kade as well. We also had quite a lot of practice with an additional contestant from Japan and Korea, so we were 3 or 4 weighed, and it still turned out well. So I was pretty confident with my line.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fantastic.
you mentioned a bunch about how like basically managing to play a very contested line. I guess I'm also curious as to like, do you have any sort of key insights as to how you're able to, I guess as to how your gameplay changes when you're playing a very heavily contested line, especially against a lot of similarly skilled players.
Yeah. So there's two ways you can play the game of multis. You either just roll it all the way down to hit your Vel'Koz 3 if you're uncontested, and then you can win the game that way. Or if you're very heavily contested, you have to push levels, get a stronger board, and wait until they die off, and that's when you can roll your Vel'Koz 3. So mainly you just want to conserve HP when you're contested, allow them to fall off and die, and then you can hit your unit when they're into the pool.
We mentioned this just before we started recording. This is not the same patch going into the World Championships, and we should say officially for the record, congratulations on making it to the World
Oh, yeah,
Championships.
thank you.
How do you feel that this Worlds patch, I suppose you'd call it, differs from the one that you've been used to playing for so long?
I don't think there's many differences. The major one being multi nerfs, so that will affect me the most. I won't be playing Ezreal, I don't think. I'll probably be playing Ornn. The scheduling is a bit rough. I've only had 3 days to prep, so I don't think I'll be able to pick up Earth in 3 days. I'll be going to Ornn, which I've played in the past, and playing similar lines just without the multi. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and you're doing a lot of, as you mentioned, you've played a lot of games, Set 9 and Set 9.5. Is it fair to say that the amount of games you played in Set 9 were relative to how much you enjoyed the game? Do you really enjoy where the game is right now? Are you indifferent to it? Are you looking forward to Set 10? I know this is sort of off topic from where we currently are, but are you liking the state of the game right now?
I don't like 9.5, not because of the units and stuff, but mainly because of the balance. I think 9.0 also had balance, but it improved over the set. Whereas this set, it had bad balance throughout, and it never got fixed, mainly because of portals and regions, how they work together. So that's why I'm quite looking forward to set 10 where they'll remove legends. I've been playing Poro for most of the set. I played a bit of Ornn and Ezreal whenever they were meta, but I want to be going back to Poro. So yeah.
What specifically about Poro did you find the most enjoyable?
Um, Poro just allows you to be open to any line. You're not going to be stuck to one play style. You'll also be probably learning more about the game itself, rather than just sticking to one line or one play style. Um, yeah, you're just more open to everything.
Yeah, nice. And how do you think that translates? Like, can you ever play Poro in a tournament setting?
Yeah, depending on meta, I feel like you can play Poro. Just this patch and many of the other patches in this set didn't allow it. Um,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm especially looking forward to next set.
Nice.
Yeah, I had another question, specifically to do with how your preparation for Worlds has been going. You mentioned that the timeline has been quite rough, especially since, yeah, you literally qualified last weekend and now going into it this week. But yeah, I guess I'm just curious as to how that's been going. Obviously you're going to Worlds with Tamura, a player who, no doubt you've worked together with before, in Set 7 Worlds. So yeah, just curious to see how it's going.
It's going okay. I think I'll be locking in my legend tonight. I'll be playing games tonight and tomorrow. We have Friday. Maybe I'll have half a day to play then. So I'll just be grinding out a ton of games. I'll be watching streams. I know there's not too many streamers. They've all checked out since they didn't qualify, unfortunately. But I'll be just looking at TFT pretty much the whole time.
Yeah, when you say, and you've mentioned a lot that you like to watch other streamers and you watch a lot of American streamers and things like
Yeah.
that. What is it that you're looking for when you watch them? Are you looking for the lines that they're playing? Are you looking for the legends? Are you just trying to absorb as much info as possible? Where's the balance for you?
I'm looking at everything, but really focusing on how they play the early game, how they play their strongest board, when they're win streaking, not too much when they're lose streaking because that's pretty basic, but also on their meta reads, especially on the first day or second day of the patch. This soap usually has a pretty good meta read off the bat. Apart from that, not too much anything special, just general gameplay.
And I guess I just had sort of one final question for you when it comes to Worlds. When it comes to like preparations, you're playing against a bunch of people that you either may never have heard of before or you've never interacted with. You know, they're from different regions and servers you've never been on before. How do you balance out the preparation of looking at other people? Is that something that you're going to keep lots of notes on? Is it something you're not trying to think too much about? Where's the balance for you there?
For myself, I think I'll just be keeping mental notes of if I see anything out of the ordinary. This time around, I don't think there will be because 95% of the players are playing Earth. They'll be doing pretty much the same thing every game. Maybe there'll be a few Ornn or Ezreal, but I think everyone will be doing the same thing, playing the same lines, so there won't be too much to notice.
Sol, did you have any final questions for Huey before we let him get out of here?
No, I mean, I think we covered a lot of really good bases. So, yeah, thanks for coming on again, and big congratulations for making it to Worlds. I'm sure you're gonna do us proud this weekend.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Guys, just a little brief interview here with Huey. Congratulations once again from us at the Roll Down. We really look forward to watching you this weekend.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks for having me.